What's up guys, Duarte here with another Marvel Strike Force video, and today we are going to take a look at the cosmic characters that we have available and see which ones we can start gearing up, getting ready for Dark Dimension 4 for the 3 nodes of the cosmic lanes, and if there is any other character that can help us on the global, maybe, because as we saw before we are not using too much mystic gear from my other team, so maybe we can start early on with some other character that uses mystic gear, but we'll take a look at that. So if you find information on this video helpful, make sure you share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you're new to my channel, I hope you consider subscribing, and make sure you smash that like button, please. Okay, so let's get started, and like always we have to hide your kids, hide your wife. You need to remove the legendary characters. So first is Black Bolt, then we have Invisible Woman, then we have Star-Lord. This is the problem with this lane, is that there are so many legendary characters that it's a problem, and especially because all of them are so good. And finally, I think Ebony Maw. Let's see if there is any other legendary that I can notice right away. I don't think so. And so Ultimus is not a legendary, so you'll be able to use him. Okay, so those are the characters that from the start we have to remove. Now, other characters that we can remove right away is the Ravager Boomer and the Ravager Bruiser and the Ravager Stitcher, because right now they are garbage. Right now I think they always were garbage, but yeah, they have no team, they have nothing, so we can't use them. Now, okay, so let's start with American Chavez. American Chavez, she works mostly with hero brawlers, she does single target damage. The only utility she has for the team is that she does single target dispel, applies defense down. Not reliable at all, so right now she is gone. Now Cable is a mutant, he works best with other mutants, and unfortunately for some reason he is the only mutant available on the cosmic lane for now. So right now we are going to remove him because he doesn't provide much, some turn rewind but long cooldowns, so that's not exactly something we can rely on. Now Captain Marvel, many people like Captain Marvel, I'm not a big fan of her. She does mostly single target damage, she has single target dispel, she sometimes chains attacks with her basic, low utility, some survivability but not that much, and she also uses the same uniques as Ultron and some other characters, so for me I'm not gonna use her. I think just the fact that she provides only single target damage, no utility, no control for a team, I think that's a good reason to don't consider her. The same goes for Corvus Glaive. He is on stealth most of the time, and that's going to be a problem for Dark Dimension. You want to have as many characters available to be attacked by the enemies as possible, so your priority characters don't get destroyed. So unfortunately Corvus Glaive, go away, and he has mostly single target damage consistently, and overall is not that great. Okay, so now let's talk about Crystal. No, let's jump Crystal for now. Let's talk about Gamora. Gamora, same problem with Captain Marvel and some other characters, single target damage, no utility, no buffs except for herself, so goodbye, you are cancelled. Now Human Torch, he applies offense down with his ultimate, he does buffs for the Fantastic Four. We have a few Fantastic Four here. Unfortunately he has very long cooldowns on the ability that applies offense down, so we have to cancel him because he's just not reliable enough. Okay, so now let's take a look at Mantis. So Mantis on spawn, she can get a charge, and with that charge she can apply stun. Stun is useful, but only single target, and she is mostly healer, she doesn't do any damage that is worth considering. And she doesn't provide energy, she doesn't provide utility, so we are going to cancel her as well. Nebula is an interesting character. I'm gonna be honest. The fact that she can get so many dodges and that she can get speed up and counters and so on, that actually makes her an interesting decoy, but that's just it. She's as good as a bot. So unfortunately, we are going to cancel her because she doesn't provide anything about being a good bot, but we are not looking out to gear up bots. Okay, so other characters. Now Mordo is an interesting character. Whenever someone Mystic dies, he heals up himself, he gives energy. The problem with Mordo is that he doesn't have any good damage, and he provides some utility, applying blinds and so on, but overall is not great. And yes, he does give you energy to himself. I mean, you could maybe consider making a combo just with him blinding everyone all the time. So okay, let's leave Mordo for now because I don't know, it's something we need to think about because it needs some 4D chest thinking. Okay, Mr. Fantastic, he works with other Fantastic Four allies. Unfortunately, he is very squishy. He doesn't provide much utility apart from buff removal, but he needs to have buffs in order to do that as often as possible. And unfortunately, the enemies that we have on the Cosmic Lane, they don't have too many buffs apart from a few occasions, so it's not like you can use him reliably, and especially because we cannot use the Invisible Woman. With that said, I guess we can say the same for the Thing. He does mostly single target damage, pretty much useless overall, so unfortunately he has to go as well. Okay, so which other characters we can talk about? I guess we can talk about the Kree minions. Now the Kree minions are not terrible because they have some of the factors that make for a good Dark Dimension team. With Ronan we can summon characters, we can apply ability block to many characters and so on. With Noble we can remove negative effects, and she can also call for assist from allies. She can provide energy. The same goes for Kree Oracle, can also provide energy. Kree Cyborg can provide offense up, and if he kills a target, he can also provide energy. The same goes for Kree Royal Guard and for Kree Reaper. They can also provide energy. They can buff themselves, but unfortunately they cannot debuff the enemies. Their abilities, while they are decent, they are not anywhere near good, and like always they are minions, and minions are not good characters to gear up for this type of events. So unfortunately we are going to have to cancel some of these minions. Noble, Oracle, Kree Cyborg. Kree Cyborg is especially bad because you have to kill enemies with his basic, and like it's very inconsistent that you are going to be able to kill enemies with his basic. It's just it's very luck based. Okay, Kree Reaper. Kree Reaper is not terrible, but unfortunately the other ones are not great. Kree Royal Guard, I'm sorry, but you are cancelled. Okay, now we have let's take a look at Karnak. Karnak is an Inhuman. He needs other Inhumans, especially Black Bolt, in order for him to have some decent stats, at least in the HP department. His ultimate does single target damage, his basic does whatever damage. His special is the only thing that is okay-ish because it applies slow for 2 turns and the turn rewinds the enemies just a little bit. But his stats are definitely not there. Overall he's a trash character, and apart from that minor slow, he doesn't provide much. And once again, without a Black Bolt, he doesn't have a decent amount of HP, so it's not like he's going to survive for long, so Karnak is cancelled. Now we can take a look at Drax. Drax spawns with taunt, and that's pretty much it. Is that going to be relevant anyhow? No. Okay, so Drax is cancelled. Okay, so we have a few characters left. Some of them are decent, others not so much. Okay, let's talk about Yondu. So Yondu can summon decoys, and that's an interesting ability. Unfortunately, that's just it, and the minions are trash overall. So unfortunately, we have to cancel Yondu, and it's unfortunately because I have him at 6 red stars, so it could be useful, but unfortunately not really until he gets reworked. Now let's take a look at Ronan. He can also remove, he can also summon minions, decoys. Those decoys provide a lot of utility, and he can also remove negative effects from the enemies, which is going to be very important on Dark Dimension 4, because there are some nodes where we are going to face heavy debuff on our team. So it's not like it's not like he's going to break the game, but I don't know. Okay, let's leave Ronan for a little bit. I'm not sure what kind of gear he uses. Okay, so let's take a look at Ultimus. And Ultimus is a very interesting character. If you have the right isolate on him, which is the striker, he can do a lot of damage, insane amount of damage. With his ultimate, with his special, with his basic, and he also applies block to fellow Kree minions or Kree allies or whatever. So he has some utility in terms of mitigation, in terms of buff removal, in terms of nuking, in terms of damage overall. The problem is that he needs the enemies to have a lot of taunts. So if the enemies are not going to have like taunts constantly, he is a very slow character. That's why whenever you see Ultimus, you have to see Korath as well, because without the special from Korath, Ultimus is not that great, because he's so slow. And if he also kills the enemies, he also gets some turn meter. That's great, but once again, in Dark Dimension is not something that you can rely on constantly. So unfortunately, we will have to cancel Ultimus, and with that said, I guess we can also cancel Korath, because Korath applies single target slow, he applies heal block, he applies taunt. The taunt can be useful sometimes, but really depends, and you need to have a specific team like Korath, Cyborg and Ultimus for the team to be anywhere good. Okay, now we have some interesting characters. So let's change his a little bit. No. Fill, remove. Now unfill and blue. Now one character that we can take for sure, and that is essential for Dark Dimension, is Hela. I think Hela has insane amount of value because of Greg, but also because she can spread negative effects from one enemy to the other ones, and that's extremely powerful. I have shown on my Dark Dimension first run how useful she was on the free-for-all node, applying blind to one target and then spreading it around thanks to her. So in that regard, she is quite decent. Now the second character that we can take that will definitely be useful, and especially with Hela, is Minerva. And Minerva is especially good with Hela, and even more if you do the T4 on her passive, because whenever one of your allies dies, Minerva gets more turn meter. So even that it's not exactly an energy generator, if you are lucky enough and your Greg gets attacked often, that might become something interesting. Okay, so let's take a look at the other characters that we have available and see if we can find something of interest. So right now we have Minerva. Minerva needs a lot of energy for her to be useful. We have Hela. Hela needs other characters to apply negative effects to be useful as well. So which characters can do that? So Loki can apply defense down. Mordo once again can apply blind, heal block and some other things with his basic. Then we have Ronan with his ultimate. Thor can apply stun, but the stun cannot be spread. Thanos and Proxima Midnight. So the character that I'm also considering taking is Proxima Midnight because her special is very important. It attacks up to 4 targets, if I remember correctly, applies offense down for 2 turns, and that alone will give a lot of protection to your characters because you are reducing the damage from the enemy. So while it's not a defense up, at least is a offense down, which is almost as good. Okay, so other character that I'm considering is Proxima Midnight. And she's also skilled, so that's going to be beneficial because right now we are only using one skill character, if I remember correctly, which is Black Widow. So far those are the 3 characters that I'm considering for sure. Now the other characters that could be interesting, but like all of these characters that we have on the table right now, they are somewhat decent. Okay, one that is not decent at all, unfortunately, is Rocket Raccoon. He's too squishy and he is going to die way too easily, and he needs a lot of energy in order to be useful. Another character that I really don't see being useful is Heimdall. He has okay HP, but his utility is very low. His damage is very low as well, so cancel it. Doctor Strange. Doctor Strange can revive. Doctor Strange can apply offense down with his basic. Doctor Strange can flip positive effects on the enemies, but unfortunately I don't see him being anywhere useful. You could use him with Mordo, I guess, but what would it be the point of it? I don't know. So right now I don't see any use for Doctor Strange, so let's cancel him out. So we have 9 characters left beyond the ones that we are guaranteed to be using. Some of these characters are part of the best teams in the games, other not so much. We have Call Obsidian, Thanos, those are part of the Black Order. And then we have Crystal, she's part of the Inhumans, a team that is very good right now, but I think is going to be even better in the future. And then we have a few Asgardians. So right now let's change these to outline characters that are possible to consider, but depends on the situation. Okay, so right now one problem that we have is in terms of speed. We don't have any way of applying slow to the enemies, and that's going to be very important. We have the ultimate from Proxima, that's decent, but it's not good enough, and we need to rely on Hela to spread it around. Okay, so with Crystal we can apply slow with her basic, we can also apply bleed, and we can spread that around with Hela. The problem is that without the Black Bolt she doesn't have a decent amount of HP. She also doesn't have energy to do her cooldowns from the special and from the ultimate all the time because she doesn't have yo-yo. So it's a character that has some utility, but it's not that great, unfortunately. Now we have other characters like Thanos. Let's take a look at Thanos. Since we have a Proxima Midnight, Thanos is a great character because he can provide energy, especially because we cannot use the full Black Order team. That's going to be great for Minerva because every time she gets energy she'll be able to do her ultimate, and that's a guaranteed way of doing a decent amount of damage to the enemies. Now there is a few problems, is that Thanos can only do energy, can only provide energy whenever one enemy dies, and unfortunately there are not many summoners on the nodes for the cosmic lanes. There is only on the last node. So in that regard we could use Thanos there, but outside of that node Thanos is not super useful. But sure, let's consider him for now, that thanks to the energy generation he will be good to do something. Because he also has the taunt, maybe he can be a decent decoy for just a little, because he doesn't have a huge amount of not HP, he doesn't have a huge amount of armor, and he doesn't have a way to give a defense up or anything, so he's not a great tank overall. But based on the ability of doing energy, that alone can be useful. Okay, so the last characters, it's really tough to say. The characters that I'm really considering is Hela, Minerva, Thanos and Proxima Midnight. Now, we could say that Thor would be a decent character to take as well, especially because he's not super expensive, because every time the Greg is attacked, which hopefully will be as often as possible, Thor gets charges, and with those charges he charges up his passive, and with his passive he does a decent amount of damage. And with Thor around, Hela also becomes a little bit more beefy, so it's a decent way to do some damage, but it's a very passive way, and it's not a strategy that you are using. You are just playing like a duck waiting to be shotted, and it's not an approach that I really like, but there is some value on using Thor on the team. The same way goes if you use Sif, because you are using the other Asgardians, so you make the entire team strong. The problem is that I don't really like Sif. I used her on Dark Dimension 3. She was not terrible, but without a constant supply of defense up, she's not that great. And since we cannot use Ebony Maw here, the only source of defense up that we have is Groot, and unfortunately Groot is extremely slow, so it's not like he can be a constant source of this defense up, especially because it only lasts for one turn. So while Groot has some utility, and Groot can also taunt and so on, you also have to bring Rocket as well, but that's going to cost a lot of alien spores for Groot and tech gear for Rocket. And those two things are things that right now we can't compromise, because we need those alien spores for the symbiotes that we'll need on the city nodes, and we'll need the tech gear for Minerva and also for Ghost on the global nodes. So unfortunately, while Groot has some utility, unfortunately we have to cancel him out. Okay, so we have 3 guaranteed characters and we have 3 possible characters. Now, I have seen some people using Loki on Dark Dimension 3, but I don't think it has too much value. You can, yes, apply defense down on the enemies, and then you can spread it with Hela, sure, but that does not affect the damage dealing from Minerva, so it's not a great option. You can do those decoys, but that's on a quite long cooldown, and he can give evade to himself only. So while it has some minor utility, I don't think he's a good character to consider, so I'm gonna cancel him out. And now we are back to Ronan, and Ronan, the problem is that he's not super cheap, he's a little bit slow as well, but he's very beefy and he has the decoys, he has some utility and so on. I just think he's not good enough, and because his team is so trash, it's gonna be probably a waste to gear him up and have no use out of him. So unfortunately, while Ronan also has some utility, we are going to cancel him out as well. And we are back to Mordo and to Cull Obsidian. Now, if you are using Thanos, we can use Cull Obsidian to be a tank. He's going to be somewhat decent. He can provide a little bit of damage with his passive. The problem is that he's bio, and we need all the bio gear possible for the global team, for Captain America and for Stature, but we also need the bio gear for the city team where we have the symbiotes, and we are going to use minimum 2 symbiotes, maybe more, but at least 2 are for sure. So we don't really want to compromise our bio gear, and that's the same reason that Crystal is not a good option. So unfortunately, we are going to cancel Call Obsidian. And finally, we are back to Mordo. And Mordo, while he's a very interesting character because he can provide energy to himself all the time and so on, and thanks especially to Greg, he'll be able to heal himself constantly. I'm going to make him a possible character if you have him with decent red stars, because the fact that you can apply constantly blind to the enemies, that is going to be a good way to protect yourself from the incoming damage. It's not going to be always reliable because some of the nodes have Taskmaster, Daredevil and some other characters that are not affected by blind, but honestly is not a terrible option. So the characters that we have here available, those three, Proxima Midnight, Hela and Minerva, those are for sure. The second option that I would probably consider would be Thanos, to add to these three characters. And maybe Mordo is going to be the answer, because otherwise we don't have good characters like Crystal. The fact that she is bio, the fact that she is without a Black Bolt and so on, it's just not good enough. So maybe we have to cancel her out completely. And Thor he has the special, he does okay damage with the special, he has the ultimate that does stun, but it takes a lot of energy to do that stun often enough to be relevant. So I don't know, it will come up to you to see if you want to use Thor or if you want to use Mordo. I'm more inclined for Mordo, I'm not exactly sure. I think I have him at 3 red stars, so I'll probably don't even consider. I think I'm just gonna stay for these 4 characters and wait to see if they release any new team. Because right now for Cosmic, without the legendaries, we don't have many options. And yes, sure, the nodes are not the hardest thing possible compared to some of the global nodes, but still is not the easiest thing either. And we clearly lack in options. So I guess that's it. So that's gonna be the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoy it. And let me know in the comments below what you think, if I should have considered some of the characters I hided, and what you think about Thanos, Mordo and Thor. Do you think Mordo is a better option because of the blind constantly being applied, because whenever Greg dies, Mordo gets energy because they are mystic. Then we have Thanos giving energy, especially for Minerva, and that's going to be a very good option. But this team lacks a defense up, this team lacks a slow, this team lacks lots of things that are extremely important for Dark Dimension, and unfortunately we didn't have many options available. So hopefully we'll get more characters in the future that can fill these gaps that we have currently in this Cosmic lane, because once again, without the legendaries, we don't have the slow from Ebonimo, we don't have the energy from Star-Lord, we don't have those things that are like more consistent. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So if you like this video, you know what to do. Smash like a boss, smash the like button like a boss. If you found the video helpful, entertaining, informative, make sure you share it with your friends on Facebook and Discord. If you're new to my channel, I hope you consider subscribing for more Marvel Strike Force content, and I will catch you guys later.